everybody, and welcome to Animal Science TV. And this is the third episode of live animal science news. Today's topic is the Murder Hornet, and it is invading North America. Two nests have been found, and the structure of this episode is going to be about an hour long. And topic one, we're going to explain what happened in Washington State and British Columbia, and then we will explain why the Murder Hornet, which I don't even like to call a Murder Hornet because it's like overblown. The Asian Giant Hornet is a problem to the ecosystem and honeybees. Topic three, we're gonna get a third guest host in here, and we're gonna bring up some more. We're gonna bring up some more wasps that we think are worse than the Murder Hornet. Okay, and then then we'll do a Q&A with the audience at the end for I don't know how much time Steven has. Okay, so that's the topic, and this is Steven. He has a YouTube channel called Atheist News, and well, he does a series called Curious Creatures, and he also does a monthly science news show, right?
Yes, although it's conscious creatures, not curious creatures.
Right. So what's Conscious Creatures about?
Conscious Creatures is a relatively new show I started on my channel where I basically just go into depth on evidence on just how intelligent some animals are. And I break it down into several main groups, such as what is their brain like, what is their history of tool use, what is their history of communication, recorded evidence of maybe these animals are closer to consciousness than we even realize.
Yeah, and so your last episode was about elephants, right?
Yes, I uploaded that yesterday, but I've done 3 so far because, like I said, it's a fairly new program I started. I did the first one on bottlenose dolphins and the second one on corvids, which are crows and ravens. It's the smartest bird there is.
Okay, so you're focusing on like the intelligence and consciousness of animals.
Yes.
Specific. That's pretty interesting. And then you also do a monthly show, right?
Yes. Also science. The other science-based program I make on Atheist News is a monthly science news show. Originally, in the first year of Atheist News, I incorporated science news into the Atheist News program, but then I branched it off into its own monthly show where I could focus just on the science.
Yep. And then oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And now I break down into groups of archaeology and paleontology news, space news, nature news, and medicine news.
Yep, it's fantastic. His channel's quite similar to mine. You guys should definitely check out his channel. I'll put the link in the chat right now. And why are you called Atheist News if you're doing all this science stuff, Steven?
Well, Atheist News itself is my main show. I do it every other weekend, where I gather up all the news relating to atheism and religion happening around the world. And on the off weeks because like I said, it's every other week. So on the off weeks from Atheist News, I do several other programs, such as an Atheist Hall of Fame, which is celebrating atheists or people who stood up towards religion and religious organizations in the past. I celebrate them. And I also do Atheist Adventurer, where I take a particular country and I go over their entire history regarding religion and where they stand today on religion and atheism.
Yep.
But I have several shows going on all at once.
Yeah, it's all really fantastic. So, you ready to start with the news?
Sure.
Okay, I was thinking we can I'll just do a quick timeline, because our news begins like a few weeks ago, October 23rd, 2020. But the Murder Hornets first became kind of viral in September 2019 when a nest was discovered in Canada, like northwest Canada, near Seattle, kind of. And they found one Murder Hornet nest and eliminated it. And then it was winter, and everyone was wondering, did we kill them all or not? And then in May 2020, this summer, a dead Murder Hornet queen was found in a road in northern Washington State. And then what happened on October 23rd, Stephen?
They found it. They found the nest that they've been looking for. However, in that nest were 200 queens. There was varying reports on exactly how many were in there, but out of 500 bees or hornets they found in the nest, 200 of them were queens. And it's important to know that hornets' nests, they have a lot of queens. It's how they replenish their society. I mean, there isn't just one queen per nest. There's a dominant queen, and these particular species of hornets do have a hierarchy in their queen system, such as when it's time to eat, the dominant queen eats first, then the second most dominant, until it goes on down the line.
So how many queens? I know that and there's this report from October 24th. They said they found 72 virgin queens, right? Which means they can't reproduce. But do we know how many reproductively active queens were there?
Basically, the way it works is these queens, the main queen dies by October. Because based on their cycle, it dies by October. So right around that time, the fertile queens, they go to leave the nest. Males are waiting outside the nest to basically tackle them to the ground, mate with them real quick, and the queens are actually fighting them off. And it's a classic evolutionary tactic for a female to fight off the males, because whatever male is successful is usually the more physically dominant and it's going to pass off better genes.
Oh, so she fights until there's a strong enough male to
So okay. When successful, that queen is then pregnant, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's fine.
And then flies off to go look for a new nest. And this is where it gets tricky. A lot of people read something like 200 queens found. Oh no, they're going to take over the whole northeast or northwest area super quick. The thing is, they have to create so many queens because they die off real easy, because there's two main factors that are a problem even once they leave the nest and are impregnated. One is surviving hibernation in the winter. That's a huge risk for them. It's not always guaranteed.
Yeah.
And two, once they get through the winter, it's finding a perfect spot to make a new nest in. And that's not easy for them either. So even though we're talking 200 queens, we're talking maybe just a couple of nests at best can come from that.
Okay. I also learned that the a hornet's life cycle is just 1 year. So what happens about right now, like when they found the nest, is that the active queen, she makes drones. Like, she makes males at this time because she's about to die. She lasts only 1 season. And so she starts to make drones that can impregnate the female worker bees. So at this exact time that they found the nest, I think what happened was she was just started making drones and was about to have these young new virgin queens become pregnant and spread around and hibernate.
See, one thing to remember is that all the information we have on these Asian giant hornets is based off of their Asian counterparts. So in terms of seasons and life cycle and all that, there's going to be variations. So for them right now, it could be a little off from their estimates.
Yeah, so we don't really know.
It's a little bit off. It's not going to be any huge changes.
But I think the overall idea of what happens in the winter is the old queen tries to make a bunch of new impregnated queens that are going to try and hide and hibernate for the winter. I think that's what's happening. All right, so I think that's maybe enough about the kind of the biology of that. Do you know about like how do they find the nest?
Well, what they did was they found drones and they kept attempting to glue a GPS tracker to them, and it wasn't working at first, but they eventually were successful, and because the bees were either dying or the glue would fall, the glue wouldn't stick in time before it flew off, so the GPS would fall right off of it. But eventually, they got it going, and that's how they found it. However, once they found it and compared it to the Asian Giant Hornets they found in Canada last year, there's a bit of a problem. Because they're actually completely different. When they did DNA testing, the group that was in Canada, I believe, came from Japan.
Oh.
And the group that was in the US came from South Korea.
Okay, so there's definitely two separate incidences.
Let me check my notes here.
Because, I have a question here.
The ones in the US came from South Korea, whereas the Canadian ones came from Japan, which means that it's coincidence. There was two separate introductions of this Asian Giant Hornet into North America.
Okay.
The circumstances on how they got there, who knows? Because the issue with that area is they could have come on a flight or they could have come on a boat, because that's a very big fishing area.
Yeah.
The whole Canadian with Alaska coastline is big fishing waters for the entire world.
What I understand, a Japanese giant hornet nest is only like about this big, so it'd be easy for them to build a nest in like a cargo ship, right?
Yeah.
It'd be almost impossible not to have that happen. Oh, I learned something interesting. I don't know if you know about this, but there's a theory that because in like Japan and in China, murder hornets are like a delicacy. So they're thinking that maybe there's a lot of Chinese in Canada, so they think maybe the Chinese took murder hornets to Canada on purpose to sell as a food item.
See, and here's the thing, we're talking about where they come from. They range from Japan to Russia to Southeast Asia. I mean, they're all over a very large part of the earth, which tells you two things. They can spread and they can adapt. So that's what caused a lot of concern in the US and Canada was, if they don't get a hold of this early, they will be an invasive species permanently.
Yeah. We can talk about that at the end. I'll make a note. What do we think is, are they going to become an invasive species, or is this not a problem? We can talk about that later. So what's the topic one? First, okay, so we eradicated the nest, right, in Washington. It's about 100 miles north of Seattle.
But they strongly believe there are other nests, because the locations they've been finding these other hornets and are too far away from that nest they found.
Oh, how far can like a hornet travel, like in its lifespan? Or
they usually have around a 5-mile radius when it comes to hunting. So
okay.
When they found these, they're like, that's quite a bit far. Now, when they're looking to build a new nest, they can go as far as they like. They just kind of shoot in a direction and look for a hospitable place to put the new nest.
Yeah, because I guess the old queen makes like 100 new queens, and they all go a bit away. And yeah. So I don't know how much you know about the operation. I know they use like a vacuum tube, and I think they use dry ice. I don't know how they did that. How they captured all these bees, because they didn't kill them all. They captured them to figure out where they came from.
There's many different methods, because as we said before, it's been a long-running issue in other countries around the world, in Japan and China and so forth. So they've developed a lot of different methods towards containing these particular hornets. But, it's pretty tried and true of containing the area, usually with a plastic wrap, and then just vacuuming them up.
So I think they have no way of, even with that single. So you think there's more than one nest, right? And yes. I think that there was 500 species they collected. I think there's probably no way they were able to capture all of them.
Yeah, there's probably some that were just out at the time. They're not all going to be home when they were sucking them up.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to say about? I want to talk about like the operation. I think it's in Blaine, Washington. No? Good?
No, I'm good.
All right. So yeah, they eradicated the nest. Maybe. Oh no, they eradicated the nest and maybe captured all of them. We don't know, and we don't think so.
As long as they got enough of them. I mean, because like I said, they play the percentages in terms of survival. So if they got the majority of them, then there's a good chance that from that particular nest, they're not going to be spreading outward. Now the issue is finding the other nests.
Yeah, I don't know how rural that area is. I know the Washington State Department of Agriculture is like asking people to keep their eyes open so they can do the same thing, right? Put a GPS on a worker bee and have it bring it back to the nest. But I think it might be a tall task. All right, so I think that's the news, right? We destroyed the nest on October 24th in Washington, and the latest news was I think November 3rd and November 11th. There has been more hornets spotted, but not queens. So, right. As it stands today, we're still seeing murder hornets, so the problem is probably not solved. Okay, move to topic 2. I'll do it. All right. Topic 2. So we're going to talk, this is called Invasive Species Threat to the Ecosystem and Honeybees. So Stephen, why are people worried about Japanese hornets in America?
The main issue is the honeybee population. Now, honeybees, in comparison to the Asian Giant Hornet, are pushovers, and they are a direct prey of these Asian Giant Hornets, as in it's their main diet. They go out searching for honeybees, just wipe them out. I mean, I think the estimates were it only takes about 30 to take out tens of thousands in a hive. The issue with that, obviously, is not just bees. It's the fact that bees are major pollinators and an important part of an ecosystem. And bees are already having trouble surviving in this day and age. So adding another hurdle for their survival isn't going to help anything. And having these Asian hornets in the US is just going to make things worse for pollination.
Yep.
Now, that's not to say they're entirely defenseless against these Asian Giant Hornets, because they've also been cataloged successfully killing them.
American honeybees?
No, in Japan.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Which was with bees that don't even have stingers were killing these things. The way they've devised, the evolution, if you want to survive, evolution will find a way sometimes. So they see a scout. They actually intentionally lure the scout into the hive.
Yep.
They do this because they don't want the scout going back to the rest of the hornets and communicating with the other hornets on where this is. And they actually do communicate with each other through pheromones. However, once the scout makes it into the honeybee hive, it's swarm on it. And it may look humorous in a way in terms of, okay, you're just throwing your body at it. But there's two reasons they do this. One, once they swarm it, they completely cover it and they start vibrating. That increases the temperature of this hornet until it dies. Or two, it pounds it with enough carbon dioxide that it suffocates.
Oh, what? So I understand the temperature thing. The Japanese honeybee can raise their temperatures by, I think, about 4 degrees Celsius, right? And that kind of cooks the murder hornet. What are you? I don't understand what you're talking about. Why wouldn't the CO2? Oh, because the reason
it breathes oxygen. So,
but so does the honeybee.
Right, and a few of them die. However, because they form a ball on top of it, they're still getting air from other sources. However, it's putting over its completely covered.
No, that makes complete sense.
Getting CO2, and that's another way to kill it. So they've recorded these bees successfully killing the scouts, and then they can continue on with their lives as long as they don't get rediscovered.
Yeah, it's actually really cool. What do they call it? Like a bee ball?
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, so part of the I think the way that works is that the Japanese honeybee has a higher heat tolerance than the giant hornets do. So like they're okay temperature wise, and the hornets not. Okay,
Yeah,
that's cool. I didn't know about the
even
like the
with stingers,
suffocation.
even bees that have stingers are kind of useless against those things because they have thick armor. Those hornets, yeah, a little stinger's not going to pierce their armor. So,
Okay, what's SMR asking? We can answer this quick. Do murder hornets pollinate? Do they eat nectar? I don't know. I'll let you answer this. I don't know, but generally hornets are like predators, and they're not very good.
they do. They eat they don't eat pollen, they eat sap. They eat oak sap, oak tree sap. And that's actually primarily what the queens eat, is oak tree sap. And it's the regular bees who are going out and eating insects. They don't eat primarily just honeybees. They eat other insects as well. And one important part of their food chain is actually the mantises. Those things are like pure protein. So they'll go out and they'll kill a mantis. They can only drink from the mantis, its fluids. However, they take the pieces, the muscles and everything, and they throw it in their like soup, I guess you could say, that the little larvae, they do eat the mantis flesh. So mantises are actually very important to their diets.
Yeah, because they have
They
like
eat sap and they eat honey.
maybe I don't know if you can quickly explain like the life cycle of a hornet.
It's pretty annual.
But
you
there's
know,
there's like the queen and then the larva.
Right. But the
honey.
yeah, you know, they're all in hibernation. You know, during hibernation is when the larvae are growing and growing and growing. Then by spring and summertime, that's when they're adults and they're flying out, they're doing their thing. Come fall, queen's got to make more babies. Queen's got to get fertilized and fly off and find their own nests to make. I mean, it's a very cyclical. So, in terms of,
it's interesting though. I thought it was interesting that during the summer, the queen doesn't make babies. That she only makes workers to grow as fast as possible, then changes the type of offspring she makes as it gets closer to winter. That's pretty interesting. Okay, so I can get back on topic maybe. So the threat is. Oh, go ahead.
In terms of being an invasive species, like I said before, the main issue is how it's going to affect honeybees, and then by default, how it's going to affect pollination. Now, some farmers actually like having these things around because, like I said, they eat bugs, including pests. So they've attempted to, in Asia, actually purposely introduce these things into farmland. It hasn't worked out great for them in terms of a large scale, but, you know, it's not the end of the world for an ecosystem, but it's certainly harmful. In terms of being an invasive species, it would take a long time for it to severely impact an area.
I mean, they don't spread that quickly, right?
Right.
Well, I don't know if we know how quickly they spread, but it would take a long time for them to get to like Wisconsin, I imagine.
Right now, they're theorizing that it's anywhere from Canada to Oregon. That could be an area that they're in.
But that's not. Well, I don't know where. That's not really where farming is it? Isn't that farming more in the center of the U.S.?
Farming's everywhere.
Well, that's true. Right. So there's a threat to the honeybees, and I have some numbers on the threat to people. What do you think about that?
I was waiting to talk about that when we talked. You know, before we talked about other wasps and hornets that are probably more dangerous, I was going to start it with how dangerous are these first of all.
All right, we'll do it later. Okay, so to be clear, these like Asian giant hornets can destroy the American honeybees because American honeybees can't do what Steven just explained. They don't know how to. They haven't evolved to do like the bee ball, the suffocation, and the temperature. So American bees are pretty much defenseless to the murder hornet. Correct?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. We haven't actually, I mean, we assume, but we haven't actually seen any recorded incidents
Oh, really?
of.
Yeah, because I've seen all these farmers on TV. They're like, they have a big bee farm, honeybee
Well,
farm, and they're
it's
worried.
their
They're worried, but
livelihood.
has it? But has it happened that a murder hornet has destroyed like a honeybee farm in America
No,
yet?
it's the implication. It's their
Also,
livelihood at risk. So of course they're going to panic when news of that comes to their ears.
so it could happen.
It could happen. I mean, they would decimate those poor hives, and
Yeah, I
and
think so,
suddenly
too.
there goes all your inventory.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. And I know honeybees are already a problem. Honeybees themselves are threatened without the murder hornet, right?
And they're still trying to figure out exactly if it's pesticide related. But the last bit of research I read about it was about, I want to say, anywhere from a couple months to a year ago.
Okay.
They're discovering that bees themselves are not strictly pollen based. They're actually omnivores, and a big part of their diet is actually microscopic creatures that they're eating for protein. So they didn't think bees ate any meat, and as it turns out,
I mean like nematodes and stuff like tardigrades. And
right,
stuff?
so just like really small, tiny creatures that they're eating along with the pollen.
Oh.
So now that they know that, they're actually gearing into maybe it's not the pesticides that are killing the bees, it's the pesticides killing their food, and they're actually starving.
Oh, so okay, that's interesting. So when you see a bee on a flower, it's not only eating like the nectar; it's also eating
Right.
the little microbes.
Microbes, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. But either way, honeybees are. I don't know what they're. Do you know if they're classified as threatened right now?
Not that I'm aware of, because they're still pretty spread out, but their population has taken a big hit.
And they're super important. I know I read like 5 years ago about people taking trucks of honeybees to farms to pollinate. So there is a threat there, but I want you to maybe say anything else about this, and then we'll go on to topic 3, where we explain why we don't think murder hornets are so bad. But is there anything else we need to mention about the ecosystem and pollination?
In terms of invasive species, this is a low risk right now, and I wish the media would take a bigger look at other more threatening invasive species. I mean, there's,
like what?
I can't remember the name of it, but there's a fish in the central U.S. in the Mississippi River that's causing them a lot of problems.
Lionfish in the ocean.
It's like some kind of jumping fish from Asia.
Oh, really? Yeah, no, yeah. So I don't think they're too bad of a problem, at least not yet. But I think we both agree that honeybees are important, though. All right, I'm gonna try to get purple in here. So can you explain why I'm gonna get purple in here for the third slot? Can you just explain why like murder hornet is kind of over? It's what's it called? It's like fear mongering, right? They're not dangerous to people. They're dangerous to honeybees.
All right, so they do kill people. However, their success rate of killing people is wildly low because, first of all, I looked at the average. It takes 59 stings is the average to actually kill someone. So you're basically being attacked by a hive. The other thing to remember is that these hornets, when they're out hunting, aren't really looking to sting anybody. They really only sting people when they're on the defensive because you're too close to a hive. So these hives are rare, and even if you see one of these murder hornets out there, they're not going to attack you probably unless you're threatening them.
Yeah, they're not particularly aggressive towards humans.
Yeah, 59 stings is a lot of stings for you to take all of a sudden. So it does have
59 murder hornet stings?
Yes, that's the average it takes to actually kill someone.
Okay.
And if you're stung 59 times by something, then what are you doing? Get away from there.
I don't know. So do you have the statistics on the deaths? I do somewhere.
I don't have the exact statistics with me, but it's only in the dozens, I think.
I have the statistics here. So, in Japan, on average, about 50 people per year die from the giant hornets, and in China, about 42 people. And that's not a lot. And in America, I'm actually shocked how small this number is in America. Do you know this? In America, only 58 people per year die from wasps, hornets, and bees. Even with allergies, that's so small. It's like less. I'm sure more people die from a lightning strike.
Those statistics you included there on Japan and Asia actually include other bees as well, not just the Asian Giant Hornet. So the actual number of how many of the specific Asian Giant Hornets people are killing is actually lower than that, presumably, because the only statistics they put out is actual overall hornets and overall wasps.
Yeah, so just the whole risk of dying from these bees is minuscule. Like,
and you got to factor in also how many of those people had existing allergies.
Yeah, but even with the allergies, because when I was a kid, I thought in my class of 100 kids, like 10 of them were allergic to bees, and if they got stung by a bee, they'd die. And I thought there'd be tens of thousands of bee deaths. This is the way that they taught it to me as a kid. It's just not true. Nobody dies from it. Well, not nobody. Few, like 1,000 maybe.
Yeah.
A year. Yeah.
Very, very small, and people now, if you're that allergic to it, you probably got an epinephrine pen with you, so you can survive it.
I mean, maybe not in Asia. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna get Purple in here with us. So,
although one testimony was being stung by him is just the same as being, stabbed with a red hot nail. So it's not a pleasant sting.
Yeah. Hey, Purple.
Hello.
Hey, hold on. Turn your face on. There you are. Oh, your dinosaur face. All right. So we're pretty much done with that, right, Steven? All right. So we're gonna move on to topic 3, and as we just explained, we don't think the Asian Giant Hornet is really something to worry about, and it's like a media clickbait thing. So
and it's just not American media that's overblowing it. The nickname Murder Hornet actually comes from Japan and Japanese media.
Oh,
yeah. There's just U.S. is certainly.
But are they talking about it murdering bees, or
Huh?
murdering bees, or murdering people in Japan? Why do they call it the Murder Hornet in Japan?
Because people died from it.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
All right.
So it's the same as the U.S. The media is just calling it to sensationalize it.
All right. Purple, can you hear
Actually, I
us?
haven't seen anything talking about them killing people, just the idea that they're destroying honeybee hives.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so we're on to topic 3, and we're going to introduce to you 4 wasps or bees that we think you might actually, or maybe not worse for people, but scarier than the Murder Hornet. So let's start by introducing Purple, and then we'll start with Steven's first wasp. So this is Purple, rhymes with orange. He has a YouTube channel about what?
Not really about much of anything. I haven't really settled on a particular topic. I occasionally do edited videos on whatever interests me. I've done a lot of stuff on holidays and some stuff on historical pieces. But mostly it's just twice a week I do just casual hangouts for whoever wants to just come in and talk about whatever's on their mind.
Yeah, I see you do pretty long live streams, like a lot. Oh, it's just twice a week.
Yeah, they tend to run 4 or 5 hours a lot of times.
Yeah. I've never been on it, but it's cool. They just kind of talk about, well, I don't know, what do you, just whatever, or what, Purple?
Yeah, well, I look up obscure holidays to give us a theme to start with, but they quickly drift off topic and just whatever anybody wants to talk about.
Holidays? Like, what do you mean?
Well, I've done things like National Potato Day and National Ballpoint Pen Day.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to let you guys reintroduce your channels again at the end. So we're on to topic 3, right? So Steven has 2 animals I have one, and Purple has one. So let's start with your first one, Steven. And I have pictures of these.
The first one I'm going to talk about is the emerald cockroach wasp.
Okay, this is it.
Now, first of all, the main difference between wasps and hornets are how social they are. Wasps are particularly singular. They don't like to travel in groups for the most part. There's a few outlier species, but they're not a social creature. So the emerald cockroach wasp, not a very big wasp. However, I would categorize this thing as more terrifying than any murder hornet. This is another one that's currently in Southeast Asia, Southern Asia, and Africa. However, they are also in the process of accidentally becoming an invasive species as well, but they're over in Brazil now. Not sure how they got there, but the emerald cockroach wasp, very pretty to look at.
Yeah.
Very small, so you wouldn't think these things can do a lot of damage. However, they have evolved in a pretty brutal way of copulating their young.
This is the zombie one, right?
Yes.
I'm looking for
The emerald cockroach wasp, as you might tell from its name, looks for cockroaches.
Here's a cockroach.
And the first thing they do is they sting it in a very particular spot that will immobilize their front legs. Paralysis. While it's immobilized, they will sting it in the brain a second time, and they're kind of searching in their brain with the stinger a particular spot to throw the venom in that will, in effect, not make the cockroach want to escape from this situation. So all their worries about they're being in danger and they need to run away, it's gone. So they've stung its front legs and it's not running away. So now the issue is the cockroach is much bigger than the emerald cockroach wasp. And that's why it does this. It doesn't kill it intentionally for two main reasons. And the first one is because it's so much larger than it. So it eats half of each of its antennae, grabs onto them, and leads the cockroach like it's holding onto a leash back to its burrow. That's why it's called like the zombie method, because it's leading this cockroach. It still feels all the pain. However, without that flight reflex, it's just kind of going along with it. And it's leading this poor old cockroach back to its burrow, laying 1 or 2 eggs in between its legs, and then covering up the burrow so that predators can't come and get this little situation, take advantage of it, and eat the roach.
Oh, they protect the roach because it's like it's like half paralyzed or immobilized.
So the 2 eggs, 1 or 2 eggs, they hatch, and they slowly eat the roach.
Yep.
Several days until it reaches the abdomen and burrows inside the abdomen. And it takes around 8 days to eat its internal organs until the cockroach, this poor old cockroach, finally dies.
The poor cockroach.
After that happens, the larva makes a cocoon, and it just lives in there until it's ready to hatch out of this husk of a cockroach, fully grown adult.
Alien style, right?
Yeah, alien style.
What do you think about that, Purple?
Yeah, it sounds like it's like injecting it with a hallucinogenic drug or something, so the cockroach is going on a bad LSD trip and never waking up.
It's actually blocking the normal nerve functions and actually increasing its dopamine levels, because these cockroaches are observed after it's stung in that part of their brain. They're grooming themselves, they're cleaning themselves, and increased dopamine levels cause them to do that.
Huh.
So it's messing with their like neurotransmitters.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's just completely suppressing the whole idea that it's in danger.
Do those things sting humans, or they're just a scary one?
They're just a scary one.
Yeah. Wait, so you said they're in Brazil. I didn't pay attention, but where are they like native?
They're an invasive species right now in Brazil. Somehow they
where
got.
are they native from? I didn't get that.
Africa, Southern Asia, and Southeast Asia.
Okay. Oh, maybe they'll make their way up to the United States.
Yeah. Well, and I don't expect that these would get a lot of press because most people would think it's just a good thing that they're killing cockroaches.
Yeah. Yeah, I know people don't give a crap about cockroaches. I'm scared of cockroaches, but do you guys know what are cockroaches just terrible, or do they serve some useful ecological function?
Well, they break down debris.
Yeah, they're not as worthless as mosquitoes are. Mosquitoes are possibly the most worthless insect there is in terms of contributing anything to the ecosystem.
Oh, are you saying like a cockroach purple can help with composting or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't want. Okay, all right.
Yeah, they break large debris down into a form that the microorganisms can more easily digest.
Okay, makes sense. All right. You good, Steven, or?
I'm good.
All right, so we'll do purple. What's your scarier than Murder Hornet?
Well, they're called cow killer ants, but
Yep.
they're
I put up a picture. Go ahead.
they're actually a species of wasp, but because the females have no wings, they're often mistaken as large ants.
Yeah.
So
I have a picture here. Yeah, and it looks just like an ant except that it's fuzzy.
yeah, and that's about the only good thing about them is they're kind of pretty because their backs are covered with this red fur,
Yeah.
which is why they're also sometimes called velvet ants.
Yep.
And the females are solitary ground dwellers. They grow to be about 2 centimeters, which is about 3/4 of an inch long.
Okay.
They're also a parasitic wasp. They seek out the brood chambers of other species of ground-dwelling wasp, like yellow jackets, paper wasp, and particularly the eastern cicada wasp.
Okay.
And they lay their own eggs on top of the host larva.
Oh, same. So same as like Steven's kind of.
Yeah, so that when the eggs hatch, they eat the host larva before they have a chance to pupate.
Man, so this thing's a monster. And why is it called a cow killer?
Well, they have one of the most intensely painful stings of any insect. And in humans, the effects generally last about half an hour. So the cow killer's, a bit of an exaggeration, but just they got their name for the sting being so painful that people felt they wanted to die.
Yeah, it has a terrible sting. So I don't know. You know how there's some spiders that impersonate ants so they can sneak around and pretend they're an ant? Do you know if this one is there any reason that it looks like an ant?
Not that I found in what I was reading about it.
There is a reason, because they're all very closely related.
Yeah.
Well, they're arthropods, right?
Ants, wasps, and hornets and bees, they're all in the same exact group of insect. Like, that's why they look so alike, is that there was only a little bit of branching between each other.
I was just wondering if there's some like mimicry going on there. Maybe not.
No, I don't think in these, but do you know about how far back, in geological record did the ants and wasps diverge?
I don't.
I know bees diverged about 130 million years ago from that group, but I don't know. I know bees and ants, even though ants look more like hornets and wasps, but ants are actually more closely related to bees, but the reason that they look more like the others is because they are still all closely related. But it's why they have so many similar. It's not just how they look; it's their body shape. It's the fact that they have wings and the mandibles, and
Yeah,
that a lot of their appearance is not by accident. They're very closely related in their social structures in terms of having queens.
Right. I actually wanted to quickly explain the difference between. I forgot to do it. The difference between bees and wasps. So hornets are hornets are a wasp. So we would need to categorize. What's the difference between a bee and a wasp?
Size.
And but also like bees produce more honey.
Yeah.
And the way they sting is different. The bee has like a barbed tail, so it has a chance to die if it stings you. Hornets are more of a predator, I think.
Yeah, the bee, when it stings, usually the stinger becomes detached. So it actually winds up ripping out its own stinger and usually dies from that.
Yeah, so
whereas
they're
a wasp has a smooth needle that it can sting repeatedly.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that wasps are much more predatory. Well, unless you're talking about like nematodes and stuff like that, Steven.
But even the Asian Giant Hornet is out there making the same things that bees do, which is combs.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Purple, about the? I'll put a picture back up. This guy, what? So this is called the velvet ant because it looks like an ant. It's not an ant, so a better name for it is the cow killer wasp.
Yeah, they actually have a multi-tiered defense. Not only are their shells so hard that it's difficult for a lot of predators to crack them, but being so rounded that any type of a striking attack tends to just be glancing off and doesn't penetrate the shell.
Okay.
And if that isn't enough, they also excrete a very foul-smelling chemical that will deter most predators away.
Oh, really? Do you know what it smells like? Poop?
No, not offhand.
Poop.
I haven't encountered these. I think maybe I'm a little further north for their range, although they do run supposedly everywhere from the East Coast to Central Texas, but they seem to prefer the warmer climates of the southern states, and I'm up by the Canadian border.
Okay. All right, so I guess I'll do mine real quick, and then we'll do Steven's second one. So my animal is the killer bee, which I used to be scared of. Okay, so here's the killer bee. It's an Africanized killer bee. And the difference here is the bees from Africa are different than American and European honeybees because they're super aggressive. So you can see pictures of like snakes, people, anything that attacks their nest. These killer bees will swarm them, like all 10,000 of them, like cover them, suffocate you, and sting you a lot. So killer bees, they're the same. They're basically biologically the same as an American honeybee, but mentally they are aggressive as hell. And if one of them dies, it releases pheromones, and all of the other killer bees in the area will just destroy you. So basically, I think the stats I found on this is that if you like step on an American honeybee nest, you'll get stung 10% as much as a killer bee. I don't want to do like a monologue. And so, anyways, what happened with these killer bees are from Africa. They're native to there, and they also ended up in Brazil. Obviously, I think this is happening from boats, but they're close enoughly related to the bees in America that they were able to reproduce with the native South American bees, and they made like a hybrid, which is just aggressive.
Yeah, my understanding was that they were actually brought in intentionally into the Americas because the African bees had, produced more honey than the native populations.
Yes, it's true. So my bee is not useless. So it does make more honey. It's just more dangerous. It does destroy local ecosystems, but it's a good pollinator and it's good at making honey, so it's not a complete piece of crap. What do you think about that, Steven?
One thing to remember is that as much as the media is sensationalizing the murder hornet right now, look to the past with the killer bee, because they were sensationalized long before the current Asian Giant Hornet were. And look how much we're worried about killer bees right now.
I just forgot they even existed.
Yeah, likewise in the 1980s, they were telling us that the fire ants were going to spread across the entire U.S. in 10 years.
They're still telling us that, no?
Fire ants are jerks.
What jerks?
Yeah, fire ants are jerks.
But they're actually ants though, unlike the velvet ant. Yeah, I was just saying that there's been about 1,000. I actually never mind my stats. There's been more than 1,000 people killed by killer bees in recent times. But anyway.
Yeah, in the side chat, SMR is asking where they were mating with American bees.
Yeah, South American bees in Brazil. They had the genetic diversity. They weren't actually different species, so apparently the bees in South America and Africa were so close that they could have sex and reproduce. Kind of like Neanderthal human situation, right? Like at which point does the species change? It didn't change, so they were able to hybridize.
I wonder about their
being a
ability to
different-
communicate. Because I remember reading a thing saying that, bees in different countries do different dances to communicate. So I kind of wonder how they were able to learn to communicate so they could mate.
When they got to Brazil, they didn't speak Portuguese.
Right.
No, they dance, but they could dance. They could dance.
What's that bee saying? I don't know.
I thought they used pheromones, but I don't know.
They do dances.
Really?
Yeah. It's kind of like a combination of pheromones and dancing to basically communicate, hey, there's this huge crop of flowers in this direction.
Oh, really? It's like SpongeBob. Flowers, and let's go.
Yep.
Okay. Let's go on to Steven's last insect.
And going off of the emerald cockroach wasp, similarly is the tarantula hawk.
This one. It's the black one with the orange wings, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything badass enough to take on a tarantula, I'm gonna find scary. And not only does this thing focus on the tarantula, it also does another very similar thing, which is to lay its eggs inside the tarantula, have it eat it from the inside out. I'm going to keep it brief, but that's another reason why I found these two particular species kind of terrifying in their style of procreation and their life cycle. Is terrifying to me, to put it bluntly. And the thing is, these things are worldwide, and they have a very, very large stinger. Anything strong enough to take on a tarantula is going to have a very large stinger. Because of that large stinger, they don't have a whole lot of predators after them. There's only a few things that can eat these things. So in a way, they've almost become sort of like an apex predator of their species, because of just the size of their stinger makes a whole lot of like birds not able to eat them. I think the only bird that can eat them is the roadrunner in the U.S.
Roadrunner.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they are worldwide, because tarantulas are worldwide, so they spread where the tarantulas have spread.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing with the cow killers, that basically any predator that's tried to eat one will probably avoid them all in the future.
All right.
Well, the difference with the tarantula hawk is that its stinger is super painful but brief. Usually the intense pain is gone in about 5 minutes.
What new Julie, what new time? I was asking, like, we have a small audience today. I was just wondering why. Did you guys do a time change?
We had daylight savings on November 1st.
Oh.
Yep.
Well, that could do it. We don't have that. I think, is America the only country that does that? I don't know.
No, Europe did it a week before we did.
Oh, I should have switched an hour. I should have kept the same time America time.
Yeah.
I kept the same time Vietnam time. Okay. Did you guys know all of China is one time zone? even though in America it would be like 7 time zones.
Here's the thing. All right, we're going way off topic here, but what happened was all of the scientists gathered from around the world to decide, okay, these are the lines we're going to go with for daylight savings, for time zones and everything. And then the countries, their representatives said, oh, we don't want to share a time zone with this country, or we don't want to do that. Here's our line. It should be straight lines, because the sun don't care about your country's borders.
I don't know.
But when they decided it, so that's why it's all a mess. And even the U.S. is guilty of it, because a lot of the time zones follow the contours of a state line.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter. So let's just go to the Q&A, I think. What else about the tarantula hawk?
That's it. I wanted to keep it brief because we have 4 different ones to cover there.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So yeah, you guys all like those like parasitic wasps, huh?
Frightening to me.
I think there's something that will just freak people out, that these things are still alive and being eaten from the inside out.
Yeah, it's scary.
It's why, the video game Last of Us, it tackled the idea of the cordyceps fungus, which is a real fungus that alters the chemistry of an ant's brain to make it do things. So that was the whole idea of The Last of Us, is what happens if the cordyceps fungus suddenly targeted humans instead of ants. So that's where I'm kind of going with how terrifying they could be. Because imagine if an insect out there decided that humans needed to be its receptacle for its eggs.
Well, there are, like the botfly, right?
Yeah, I mean, and there are creatures out there that does it, but imagine something flying at you, with a stinger, and it'd be pretty frightening.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna move to the Q&A. So I guess Steven, I'll let you summarize this really quick, and then we'll go to the Q&A. I'm gonna go back. So topic 1, what happened? We found a nest in Washington and destroyed it, right?
Found a nest, removed it. Not, I don't know if they destroyed it, but they removed all of its occupants, and now the issue is they're still finding drones. So
basically, mission unsuccessful, I think.
Now
we'll find out next year.
Now it's hibernation time. Are they going to find many more drones? Probably not. So now, unfortunately, it's going to wait until spring and summertime again to find more, to track them back to their hives.
The question's going to be how many queens survive winter.
Yep. And I think 0 is really unrealistic. So I think we'll have a slow invasion. It won't be a big deal.
Yeah. Like I said, the Murder Hornets, they play the percentages. They make a ton of queens just so that a couple can survive.
Okay.
But you did say they're in Japan and like way up north in Russia, so they are used to cold climates already.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
but
mainly
I've been to Japan and no one gives a crap. Like no one's scared of murder hornets in Japan. It's like
they prefer force. They prefer force and lower elevations.
So the Pacific Northwest sounds like it'd be pretty good ground for them.
Yeah, plenty of force.
All right, so and then we'll recap topic 2 quick. So let's just ask Purple, because we already talked about it, Steven. So Purple, what do you think about the threat of murder hornets in America?
Yeah, it does sound like it's been sensationalized by the media, but that just tends to be what the media does.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not a threat that should be ignored either, because we don't want them spreading any faster than they have to, but it also seems inevitable with all the shipping between continents that sooner or later they will get established.
Yeah,
because of the pandemic
no way to
right
stop
now,
it. The pandemic, yeah.
Because of the pandemic right now, I'm sure, if not for the pandemic, we'd already have like a sci-fi original movie of the Murder Hornets on its way.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think we all agree that it's not really that big of a deal. But we also agree that invasive
it's a big
species
deal, but for
are a
other
problem.
reasons.
Invasive, I think it's a problem, and we can't fix it really.
Yeah. Well, and like you were saying, that the honeybees were already struggling even before these things appeared here.
It's a big deal for other reasons. It's not a big deal because it ain't coming to kill you. It's a big deal because it's going to have negative effects on the ecosystems.
For sure it will.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's going to affect the farmers and the crops getting pollinated.
Yep. Okay, then the topic 3, we'll recap it real quick. Well, we already did it. Never mind. All right, to the Q&A. All right, what do I have for questions? Did you guys notice any questions? I wrote some down. Well, I got 4 questions. So I think we already answered this. The first question I have is from SMR. So, do murder hornets pollinate?
They do a little bit, but not anything significant.
Like, would they be beneficial in any way? In America?
Not really. It's not gonna help.
Well, maybe if you hate like sugar and honey and stuff. Or what do you think, Purple?
Yeah, I don't really see where they would be doing much of anything beneficial here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Any
just
pollination
stealing
they do
bees.
is incidental.
The honeybees in America are so important for farming that I would think that if they were everywhere in America, it would be pretty bad news. But
Yeah, the bee populations were just beginning to recover in the last couple of years.
yeah, but this is gonna take. I don't know how long do you think it would take, Stephen, for them to migrate all by themselves from Washington State to like Ohio? Like
Minimum probably a decade.
Well,
Or more,
although
I
the problem is, they don't have to migrate by themselves. They can hitch a ride in shipments.
oh, that's
So
true.
that's kind of a wild card. There's no way of telling when they might appear in another state.
Oh, probably pretty soon. Then that's a good point, Purple. Of course, because like they hitched a ride from like a ship from Japan to Canada. Like,
Yeah,
of course
so
they'll
if they
jump on
wind up
truck or
making a
something.
hive in a truck or something.
Well, they will. Yeah. They always do. Have
Yeah,
you guys ever
it's
had
not
like?
like they cross the Pacific Ocean on their own.
But don't you guys always see hives and like I don't know. I feel animals always build crap in your car.
Oh, I had to clear a wasp nest out of the mirror in my truck.
Yeah, that would do it. Easy. Okay, I'm gonna start the second question of the Q&A. I have a question for both of you. I was wondering if what happened was like 20 murder hornets came on a boat from South Korea to Washington, wouldn't their genetic diversity be so small that they would be all inbred and fail? Like they lose the genetic diversity if it's only a couple.
Genetic diversity is not as important to insects as it is towards the rest of the animal kingdom.
Yeah, I would think that in a hive insect you wouldn't have very much genetic diversity anyway.
No, they're all related.
Yeah, and I think what I learned about that might be that their reproductive cycle is faster and they have more mutations. Like if like 2 pandas or 2 elephants came here, they're way too slow and not enough mutations, they would fail. But
Yeah, in mammals you generally need about a population of about 1,000 to have enough genetic diversity to keep going.
and that's just not the case with insects, I guess, or arthropods in general.
Nope.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
just
I think they reproduce so fast and then with enough mutations that they can Adam and Eve it, I guess.
I did have a question about the bees. That
Terrible
you were,
analogy.
What do you mean? How did 2 humans? Go ahead, Purple.
well, you were saying about the bees actually, eating some microscopic creatures and that. And I was just kind of wondering what the size limit was on that. That would, would bees maybe eat something as large as mites, or is that too big for them?
Too big. I mean, because they would have recorded, for hundreds of years, it was assumed that bees only ate pollen and, the honey and everything like that. So if there was any instances of bees eating mites, it would have been physically seen.
Well, I mean, people aren't aware that you generally have mites on your skin all the time and people can't see those.
That's true. Well, I mean, mites can be quite small.
Yeah, mites
Like
mice
mice.
can border microbe level.
Yeah. Okay. MC, can North America fully eradicate these species of bees, or is it impossible?
If enough determination, they can wipe out anything they want, I guess.
I think it's pretty much impossible.
Burn the forest.
We could like nuke Seattle. I think it's impossible. What do you guys think?
I think if Trump got elected again, they would be trying to nuke the forest.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it couldn't make another wildfire again.
Well, and I think the problem is even if we manage to eradicate whatever nests are here, there's still going to be more coming in from time to time. There's still going to be more stowaways.
We never learned exactly how they got in. Like I said, it was two separate ways they got in. So who's to say, even if they wipe them out, if it doesn't happen again until we learn how they got here in the first place?
Well, and basically, I think unless they start fumigating every ship that comes into port, there's going to be invasive species coming in.
Yeah,
You can't. I don't think you can do it.
basically that's not happening.
Yeah, it's not practical.
All right. Yeah, I don't. It's pretty tough to control any of these large spread invasive species. The reason they're an invasive species in the first place is because they're so successful. Like, like rabbits. They're so successful. How are you going to get rid of them?
Yeah, well, if they don't have any natural predators in the new area they're introduced to, then they take off.
If there's a determination to keep stuff away from a population, it can be done. However, a country as large and a continent as large as North America, it's a lot more difficult. But if you look at Australia and that island with the quokkas, they do everything they can to keep predators off that island because they would be wiped out. So it just depends on how small of an area you're trying to protect from an invasive species.
Well, and also how small the species is that you're trying to keep out.
Right.
Insects can get in a lot easier than like a mammal-sized predator could.
That's why mice are so widespread, because it was not hard for them to...
Yeah, stowaway on ships and run all over.
Yeah.
All right. Question 3. Julie Ace Pilot asks, I don't know the answer, but so I was saying that murder hornets are a delicacy in Asia, and her question, sorry, we're wondering how do they collect them?
There's a bunch of different ways to collect them. Like I said, you can wrap the area around in plastic and then just vacuum them up. There's nets because they're so large compared to other bees. Like that was one attempt to protect honeybees, was to make these nets that a honeybee could squirm through, but the hornet couldn't. So there's a bunch of different methods to trapping these things, and then they fry them up to the point where they're super crispy, and then just eat them whole, including the stinger. Or they take the larvae and they fry that up and make a dish out of it. I can't even remember what it was called, but I have no interest in eating insects myself, but it's just a culture thing, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to this, but I would imagine you would make like a murder hornet farm if you wanted to sell them like in the market in Thailand or something. And yeah, you could just put net. You could put like huge net around it because they're too big to get.
Well, it's difficult because then it becomes a cost issue. Do you really want to farm them, because then you have to supply them with honeybees to eat? like I said, honeybees are a big part of their diet.
Okay.
On the other hand, what you're saying about the nets, that could be a very useful way of protecting the honeybees.
Yeah.
That you could cover the honeybee hives with a screen that's small enough that the murder hornets couldn't get through it.
Okay. Julie, do you have any more questions about that, or what do you think the answer is? I don't know. I didn't bother to look how they farm them. I know they sell stuff like that in like Cambodia and Bangkok, like on the tourist streets. Like I ate a tarantula in Cambodia. It made me sick. Literally.
SMR had another question there. if somebody could explain how a queen makes the different types of bees or hornets, that some are drones or future queens or whatever.
I don't know the answer, and I'm hoping Steve does, or you do.
Off the top of my head, if I'm remembering accurately, the way it's done is not so much how they're born, but what they're fed immediately after being born. There's something called royal jelly that they feed queens to get them to become queens. It kind of changes their how they grow up, I guess you could say.
So
it's basically a more
somehow affects them, like between the stage of a larva and a pupa.
Right.
How they develop.
Kind of like how...
Like testosterone or something like that, kind of?
There's a reason that men and women both have nipples, even though men have no purpose for nipples. It depends on... Yeah, don't touch your nipples. It just depends on when things are changed in the cycle of growing up as a fetus. Sex isn't determined in a fetus until after the nipples have already formed, which is why both men and women have nipples, but only women actually need them for their intended use.
Okay, yeah.
Monotremes manage without them.
What?
Monotremes manage without them. Monotremes have no nipples.
Right.
They just sweat the milk out through the skin.
Right.
You mean like the platypus?
Yeah. The platypus and the echidna.
Oh, okay. Monotremes, aren't those? I thought there was an easier name for those.
Story that's going to be on my next science news. The platypus just got weirder. They've now discovered the platypus also glows.
It is bioluminescence?
Yeah. So it's not just an egg-laying mammal that has poison glands and uses bioelectricity. It also glows.
Okay, they glow in the dark now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'll be looking forward to that episode.
Is that your next one?
No, it's actually the next one. Because I still have to do science news. Like, I'm in the month of November right now. So I do all the news stories regarding October some point this month. So next month when I do December's show of science news, it'll be for all the news in November. And that, like, just happened. I just read about that discovery. Basically, they were shining UV light on flying squirrel specimens because they discovered they glow, and they were like, let's check on other specimens we have, and they shined UV light on the platypus and it glowed, and they were like, what the hell? And they started checking other specimens, just to make sure it wasn't their particular ones, and no, all platypuses apparently glow.
Interesting. Okay. All right. I have like a very small audience, so I think we'll end this. I think we answered the questions. Did you want to talk about allergies, Purple?
Oh, I was just wondering, as far as the stings from the murder hornets, if there was an instance of people being allergic to them.
Yeah, it's the same as other bee and wasp and hornet allergies. It's more dangerous if you're allergic.
Well, I was also kind of wondering that, if maybe, evolutionarily, people in the areas where they're native might have been more likely to build up a tolerance to them, whereas, people from other ethnic groups that were never exposed to them might be more sensitive to the toxins.
I don't know. It could be.
Not that I'm aware of. There's not any evolutionary advantage that has developed that I'm aware of.
Okay, I didn't know. It's just a question that came to mind.
It's plausible, though. Kind of like people have sickle cell anemia and high area malaria risk.
Right. And people in Nepal, they have very different methods that their blood carries oxygen because of the high elevation.
I think that I would imagine that the murder hornets are not a big enough problem to humans that they would have evolved the defense mechanism.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, other things, it does happen. All right.
Although in the U.S., I'm sure the deaths from bee stings would be a lot higher if EpiPens weren't so common now.
I don't know. I'm shocked it's only like 60 a year. It's crazy. Why do they scare us with that so much? All right.
Well, when I was
Purple, I'm gonna wrap this one up.
Okay.
Well, okay. Well, I'll let you guys go. Talk for like a minute or something that important I forgot to mention about Murder Hornets.
We covered it, I'd say.
Yeah, I think we covered the topic pretty well.
All right. So we're going to say goodbye to everybody. And thank you for your questions. With no questions, I get quite bored. So, Purple... I'll paste your channel in there. Purple, can you just explain why someone should check out your channel and maybe subscribe?
Well, like I say, mostly it's just, casual things that we have people hang out, talk about whatever they want to.
And people can go on your show with you, right?
Yeah, as long as it's somebody that I've at least seen in the chat a few times to, know that they're not a troll. Now, pretty much anybody could come in. And I do that every Wednesday at noon U.S. Central Time and every Thursday at midnight U.S. Central.
Yeah, I think that's been really useful during, like, Corona lockdown.
Yeah.
Because people, and if people are locked down by themselves, it's actually quite useful to, like, be able to do some type of interaction, yeah?
Yeah, and one special event that last year we had run a relay marathon chat all of Christmas Day, so that each person would take a 2-hour time slot and pass it to the next channel, just so that anybody who was alone on Christmas Day, there'd be some place they could go and talk to friends.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we'll be setting that up again. We're starting to schedule that and looking for people willing to take time slots to host.
Okay, and the last thing I want to ask you, why is your picture a dinosaur?
No, that's just my personal mythology. I've always loved dinosaurs, and back in my days when I was a pagan, I used to say that I was reincarnated from a triceratops that lived in Montana 66 million years ago.
You used to say that, or you used to believe it?
Well, it was just one of those things I would throw out there because it was impossible for anyone to verify.
That's impossible. I was there.
Okay, so anyway, thank you, Purple, for jumping in for the Q&A section and teaching us
about it was fun.
Velvet ants. Now we'll say, Steven, just maybe in like 1 minute. You already described your channel, but why should people check you out?
Well, I just have a large variety of shows. So if you want to check out the news that's happening around the world on atheism and religion, go check out the channel. And in the meantime, there are other programs on the channel, whether it's science news, atheist Jeopardy, science versus religion.
That's how I found you. I found you on Atheist Jeopardy randomly. I don't know how I found it in the search engine.
But yeah, Atheist Jeopardy is just, as you might expect, where we get together a couple people and we play a game of Jeopardy where the categories are all related to atheism and religion. I don't do that too often, but because it's a logistical nightmare just to wrangle people together at a certain time. Chris, I'm sure you know this too, trying to corral guests for a show.
Yeah.
And all of my other shows I just do on my own, so it's a lot easier for me to do because I know my own schedule.
Yeah, your channel's pretty similar to mine, because you're doing science news and like conscious creatures. So I think my audience would enjoy Steven's videos, like most of your videos, right? The ones about animals and science.
Yeah, even if you're not interested in today's news, or if you're not an atheist particularly, then I have science content on my channel as well.
Yeah, well, I think we have to kind of pick a niche, right? I can't really do animal science news and cater to overly religious people. It's just gonna be, I don't know. All right, what do I do now? Is that it? All right, I think it's time to say bye. So I will say, thank you, Steven, for... I know you, went through some hoops to be able to be on here today. So thank you so much, and thank you for the research.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and Purple, thank you for coming, too, as the guest host.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It was great to be here.
All right. Well, for me, good night. Have a good rest of your day in America. I'm going to play the end.